I have a question for Amy, but it's also related to what Beth said yesterday, I believe. Because when you showed us the the image of the American Nazi Reich, I noticed that the East was part of the Nazi Reich, and it was approximately the same geographical location as Gilead in The Handmaid's Tale. Apart from the Republic of Texas in The Handmaid's Tale. So is there anything about the East that might be more inclined to becoming a totalitarian state? Well, that's food for thought.
Compared to California.
I haven't actually, yeah, I'm going to have to think about that because I haven't actually engaged in that particular, acts of reflection. But what I can say is that in this series, what's complicated is that the site of Lackawanna is where the big Nazi experiment is. And I had to go back time and time, it's in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. And I had to go back time and time again to check because scenes that I thought were taking place in the neutral zone are actually taking place in the forest near the Poconos. And so there is definitely something about there being this secret, isolated location within the Nazi Reich in the natural setting of the Poconos in a mine. So there's definitely something about natural resources that lend themselves to the narrative, which is something we do study quite a bit in geocriticism. So.
I had a more comment or question for Georges-Claude. When you were talking about the commodification of icons, of gay icons, it reminded me of and I was one of the people who watched the entire series for you. There's a scene where they go to Ruby's friend's house and she's going to perform in their house, and there's a whole thing with sort of older middle-class white people wanting to get their pictures taken with
drag queen.
with drag queens. You talk about that a little bit?
Yes,
in
absolutely.
This context.
Thank you for that. Yes, of course. I think what they were trying to do at this point is to is a form of mise en abîme. Really, they were deliberately including that mainstreaming and that appeal because. Even though, I mean, it's always the same. You can say, oh, it's horrible that it's happening, or you can say it's really good that it's happening from the same political perspective, depending on which way you look at it. But there is still, even though perhaps the acceptance is growing and the tolerance is growing, or the open-mindedness, or whatever you want to call it, there is still that phenomenon of the exotic other that you are fetishizing. So that definitely works in that scene. And so RuPaul is doing something with that and using this exoticization of the exotic other as a way to make things progress. Because what he does is actually queer pedagogy. That's my take on it. Queer pedagogy is what RuPaul does. And the quote that I didn't do because I didn't have time, that many of us know is, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else? I wish I could do his accent better, but that's mostly the general message. So, and the word I couldn't find when I said Jane Fonda adoube RuPaul is perhaps embraced, and that was Elizabeth's suggestion, but he has indeed been embraced, and I think it's very symbolic that Jane Fonda does that when he gets his star on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood.
And also there's a scene like that in Queen of the Desert, in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. There's a scene where they're taking pictures with them.
Yep.
I think.
Absolutely.
I also have a question for Amy. You mentioned the fact that you were really interested in the way TV shows are delivered nowadays with online platforms, and that you don't necessarily have to wait 1 week for the next episode. And I was wondering if you're working on that, because you also mentioned the fact that you had to take a break between 2 seasons of The Man in the High Castle. And there's something really interesting nowadays with YouTube and Twitch that are
are reacting videos or live reacting videos, where people go to see someone watch the show, and it becomes a sort of moderator, and it's especially popular in dystopian and science fiction TV shows. And I was wondering if you think it is because of the topics discussed on how tough they are, or is it just because they are attention seeker who wants to give their opinion to the world?
Okay, so thank you. I haven't been able to work as much as I want to on the reactions, for example, to The Man in the High Castle. But what I'm interested in comes kind of from the writing industry. Since now we have this on-demand consumerism of television series, how is that going to have an impact on the production and also the consummation of the series? So that's something I'm going to have to work on. But I will tell you that personally, I live tweet for one thing once a year, the month of May. Can you guess what it is? It is definitely Eurovision. So I we can do that together if you'd like. I have a Twitter date with some former students, and this is one of the only things that I react to live, but I do it every year in all 4 hours. I usually throw in the towel and go to bed once the results are given, but I have to do it. I'm not yet a European citizen, but I feel like this is me practicing my potential European citizenship. I haven't watched the reactions yet. Sometimes I cannot watch things. I'm a very visual person, and I was actually going to ask Anne about this, so maybe you can follow up. But I tried to watch Orange is the New Black, and I was like so uncomfortable about it. I didn't get very far, even though I quite liked some of it. I like the TV titties episode, scene, for example. I thought that was really cool, but I just couldn't get into it. Or Downton Abbey, I had so much drama going on at work, I had to stop watching Downton Abbey as well. I had, enjoyed several series, but I didn't need extra drama. So I think that, I have kind of a particular reaction to series, but I'm going to follow up on what you said and look for people showing their reactions to the dystopian series, because, what I'm mainly concerned about is that these images are going to be used to promote neo-Nazism in the United States. That's really going to be my next goal for that. And oddly, even though I just sort of dug a little bit, I didn't find anything. Like, I was expecting articles about that. And what I found were articles about how the Man in the High Castle publicity ads that were all over the New York Metro had to be pulled. And I read that they made a big publicity stunt out of destroying all of the swastika staged drops and props that they used, and also the Japanese ones. They made a big deal about burning it so that it was clear that they weren't to be used for supporting those movements. And then that article itself failed. People reacted negatively to the destruction of those symbols. But I'm going to look at what you said about those reactions.
Can I prolong that? When the RuPaul's Drag Race is on every week, there's a zillion people who comment upon the episode, of course, on YouTube. Some of them authorized, World of Wonder Productions, authorized by RuPaul. And it's all very meta, because then they comment, other people commenting upon other people, etc. And I was curious to see what would happen with AJ and the Queen. And we had exactly the same thing. We had people who had already been involved in those comments on RuPaul's Drag Race, commenting upon AJ and the Queen, always, as I was doing, with RuPaul's Drag Race in mind. So I thought that was really interesting to watch some of them.
About Orange is the New Black, it's actually a series that I stopped watching and then started watching again for work, and also because Monica and Sarah told me that it became so much more interesting as you went along, which is why I included it also in because that's often what happens or doesn't, where people say, oh, just watch the first season, then you can stop, or, And so one thing that, when you said you like the little white titties, TV titties thing, is that, there was this, what was very refreshing about Orange is the New Black was the representation of lesbianism, which was that, it happens in prison, but it's not at all the way that it's been stereotypically presented, and that women can like there isn't that kind of tension like that there is around male homosexuality in prison, which is that, I mean, except for the final season with the guard who manipulates Alex into sleeping with her and it becomes very complicated, there is no abuse. When women don't want to sleep with other women, they just say no, and then they have to say it 15 times, but there's no lesbian rape, and there does end up being a heterosexual rape in the series, and it's also very interestingly dealt with, and people comment a lot about it online because they're in a relationship. It's Pensatucky who gets raped, and it's really filmed as rape, and it's not graphic. You only see her being raped, but you only see the top of her body, and then he doesn't understand that he raped her, and so of course the idea is to start a debate between men and women, between women watching the show, and then after a few episodes, he is confronted, and someone tells him, "But you raped her." And then he says, "No, I didn't," But then he thinks about it, and he realizes he did rape her, and then he apologizes, and then they get back together. And so, but then she's in prison, who else does she have? But at the same time, women do get back with their rapists, even when they're outside of prison. And so it creates this whole conversation, and that's what Orange is the New Black did so well, and a lot of series do very well. And I think it's Vinclair who says that TV series are about starting conversations. They're not necessarily about solving them, and I do think we all see that in everyday life, that people talk about TV series to talk about issues, and they don't have to agree on the conclusion of the show, and sometimes the show doesn't even give an answer. That's okay, because that's not what they're for, really.
Okay. You mentioned how female homosexuality is dealt with differently than it is usually addressed and depicted in Orange is the New Black. And an interesting example of that is the all too common trope, the kill off your gaze trope, which manifests in Poussey Washington's murder. And I was wondering how, in your opinion, the depiction of female homosexuality in Orange is the New Black destabilizes existing tropes of female homosexuality. And in particular, you mentioned Voss and the prison guard, I don't remember her name, but the notion of a strong power dynamic in that relationship creates a precedent, I think, in the representation of female homosexuality. I might be wrong, but...
Well, about killing Poussey Washington, it's very important that they are... so there's the kill off your gay trope, but also TV series will use death to kill off a beloved character. And this happened twice and was criticized twice, in Orange is the New Black, but also in The 100, where the hero of The 100, who's very butch and heterosexual, falls in love with a woman, and it takes a while, and finally they sleep together. And I mean, they're just out of bed, and her lover gets killed, and people reacted very badly to it because finally she was sleeping with a woman, and we had all been waiting for it, and then she goes back to a man, and then I stopped watching the series. I'm sure she's bisexual. That's the whole point. She's bisexual, and that's something. But and so basically, numbers change everything. There are so many gay characters on Orange is the New Black that you can't really say you killed her off because she's gay, but she's a very likable character, and I think that's why they chose her, for it to be so unfair, because she was the one with a future, So it parallels the Black Lives Matter movement outside, and say her name, etc., because you're so anonymous in prison. The show, I think, is very aware of stereotypes and countering stereotypes, especially since Alex and Piper are L-word lesbians. And I didn't comment because I tried to say too much, but did you see the picture of the real Alex Voss and what she looks like? She looks like Big Boo. Like that's who she really is. And the introduction of Big Boo, and she's a very famous comedian within the lesbian community, which we never thought would become a star. She was too old. Yeah, she had one line in Friends. She kisses Phoebe. She comes out, she kind of hits on her. Yeah. And so she changes very much as a character. She becomes a well-rounded character when at the beginning she's just a stereotype. And really, I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I'd love to do research on the writers and why they did what they did, but really, to me, Orange is the New Black was the counter L word. And then today, what is it called? Underwork. What is it called? There's a new TV series, Work in Progress. Work in Progress is also the anti-L word, you know. And I think I wrote articles about it. I really think the L word will, for a while, still be that model, and you can, and it's a model for a lot of series that copied the L word. A lot of movies, you're like, oh, another L word movie, you know. But it's also a counter model. And Orange is the New Black gave us both at the same time. They were like, okay, we're going to make a show that's going to be super successful. So we need Bette and Tina. But then all of their friends, they're in prison now. So it's not going to be Shane, and it's not going to be. But then in season 6, 7, they gave us Shane again, you know, and minor characters. That one of the slides is that that actor that everybody loves. She's here. She's here. She's Shane, you know. She's irresistibly butch and femme at the same time, etc., etc. So I can't remember what the question was, but yeah, thank you.
And I think we'll stop here.